And greetings, everyone. Happy Sunday. Happy
Hello.
Sunday. And welcome back to the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis platform for a Sunday afternoon podcast slash chit chat with us. Um, just in case there is anybody watching this, whether you're watching live or you're watching this recording who has never been on this platform before, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Therese Millett Joseph. I am the founder of the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis platform. And here we are all about empowerment and personal development and optimal mental health for women everywhere. So, please, if this is the kind of content that you're into, make sure you follow and like and subscribe to the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis platforms. You can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, on TikTok. Yes, we on TikTok and on Instagram. So you can follow us for more content like this. I do this podcast every 2 weeks, and we tackle mental health and personal development topics, but as the name suggests, even though we want to help everybody, because we love everyone, as the name suggests, we are very focused on the development of the queens on this platform. They are our primary target, right? We are here for the empowerment of the queens wherever they are. And as you can see, I'm not here alone today. I have my sister queen with me, Davina. So, Davina, I'm going to give you a chance to greet the people. Let them know who you are, tell them a little bit about what you do, and then
Okay.
we're going to jump into today's conversation.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Divina. I am many, many things. I'm a medicine woman. I am a spiritual mentor. I'm an energy healer. I work with plant medicines. My work generally supports as a whole, right? All of these tools that I use support women in healing their relationships with their wounds, in supporting menstrual cycles,
Okay.
in helping them connect to their blood, in helping them remember who they are and tapping back into their sensual energies. And on that note, I also live in Mexico. Today is actually National Independence Day. So that's what these bombs are. I'm just going to close my window because I don't think they're going to
Oh,
stop anytime soon.
okay. Wow. I did not know it was Independence Day in Mexico. It's good to know. It's good to know. All right. So today oh, by the way, let me tell you that while Davina and I are having this conversation, the chat section, the comment section is going to be open. Please feel free, if you are watching us live, please feel free to interact with us. You can type whatever you want to say, whatever your thoughts are, any questions you have into the chat section, and we will be happy to answer them or speak on them, okay? All right. And of course, this is being recorded. So you can watch this and rewatch this and share this and download this as many times as you want after we get off of this live right now. So don't worry about it if you have to step away. All right. So we're talking about attachment styles today. And attachment trauma and attachment things. So let's get into it. Let's get into it. Let's start off the conversation with maybe with what exactly attachment trauma is, and what is this thing about attachment styles, and why is it important? Why do we even need to be sitting here having a conversation about it? Like, why is it a thing? That I feel like that's a good place to start the conversation. Um, So do you want to jump off on it, or you want me to be the first to start delving into the pool?
Hello,
Hi,
Chris.
Chris.
Yeah,
Welcome, Queen.
I would love for you to delve in first because I know that our perspectives sometimes come from a different place. So I would love for you to share first.
All right, no problem. Happy to do that. So let's start with the question of what is attachment trauma and attachment styles. Attachment theory has to do with, and I'm going to try not to use a lot of psychological jargon. I am going to speak in layman's terms here.
Yes, please.
Very, very down to earth terminology. So, attachment theory in psychology is about the type of relationships that we establish with our earliest caregivers after we come earthside as little baby humans. So, whoever the first or earliest caregivers are in your life as a human being are going to be the primary influence on your attachment style, or in other words, how you attach to other human beings. Because your introduction to relationships, your introduction to human interaction is going to be based on what those interactions with the first humans you meet look like. So imagine what your attachment style will develop into if you have very healthy, warm, wholesome, functional, beautiful attachments to your earliest caregivers. Imagine what your attachment style will look like as you grow into an older human being. But also, imagine what it will look like if those early relationships with your first humans that you meet is an abusive, dysfunctional, toxic, chaotic relationship. And that's your introduction to what human relationships look like. You develop an attachment style that is obviously going to be an unhealthy and unsecure attachment style, and you will grow into adulthood with that. So, our attachment styles, most of the time, I am going to say 99% of the time, do not develop in adult life. I am leaving a small 1% because when you're working with human beings, it's never an exact science, right? You have to always leave a little bit of room for the exception to the rule, because humans are, it's just not an exact science. It's not like physics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
psychology. And so there's always going to be an exception to the rule somewhere in there. And there might be that 1% who have attachment styles that develop in adulthood because of very traumatic experiences that they have that cause them to develop insecure attachment. And there is also the possibility of working on your attachment style throughout your adult life and developing a more secure attachment style over time if you are aware, if you develop enough self-awareness and you are able to acknowledge that there is some insecurity in the way you attach to other humans, you can absolutely work on it. So we leave room for those types of things. But for the most part, your attachment style is developed in childhood, and psychologists say that it is developed before the age of 2. That It's how early, like, so by the time you are 2 years old, you already have an established attachment style based on what the earliest relationships in your life have looked like. So
Mm,
this is why this is a big deal. This is not
yeah.
just impactful for people who want to develop more secure attachment styles so they can have healthier relationships now, but I think it is also very impactful for people who are currently raising children or
Mm,
planning to become parents. This is an
mhm.
important conversation for people who are going to be raising little humans,
Yeah.
because you will understand that if you are an insecurely attached adult, you are very highly likely to raise insecurely attached little human beings, because you
Mm,
will pass on to them what is already inside of you. You can't give people what you do
you
not
don't
have,
have.
but you
Yeah.
definitely give them what you do have, right?
Mhm.
So this
Mhm.
is so these are all of the reasons why this is such an important conversation to have. Um, and just have the awareness and know that if any of what we say here applies to you, you can fix it. Nothing here is carved in stone. You
Mm,
can work on yourself. Personal development is possible for you. Healing
mhm.
is possible for you. And so yeah, this is why this
Mhm.
is an important conversation. So yeah, that's basically me laying the groundwork there.
Mm.
I'm gonna get off the microphone for a little while and let you talk, because clearly, yeah, you see, I could just keep going and going.
Yeah. Do you mind if I just follow up on
Yeah,
that?
sure. Go right ahead. Jump right in.
Okay. Yeah. Um,
Oh,
now it's
look,
all
we already have a question. You can tackle
mhm.
that. Go ahead.
Can your attachment style change? Yeah. Yeah. And as you mentioned, the most important thing is that we have this awareness. And so that's why this conversation is again so important, because without awareness that when you were 2 and your parents split up and maybe your dad left or someone passed away or a tumultuous relationship began to develop, that is still with you in the way that you interact with others. And so if we're
Yeah,
not aware, it becomes this unconscious pattern that we repeat over and over and over again, whether that be in our relationships with the opposite sex or in our relationships with other women, in our ability to have sisterhood, because we have this mother wound and this really unhealthy attachment style that developed when we were young. And now we don't trust women, or now we don't know how to be vulnerable in friendships. And so
or we have
recognizing,
lots of relationship anxiety.
or we have relationship anxiety. We don't know how to show up fully as ourselves because we were told that the way that we were wasn't good enough, wasn't smart enough, wasn't skinny enough, wasn't whatever enough. And so yes, it can change, and the first step in changing is recognizing what it is and when it started, and that okay, now the adult self is going to come in and make some adjustments to this attachment style that was developed when we were children but is still fully alive in us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think the first and the most important step is absolutely awareness, because for the most part, I am going to say people that I have worked with, I can speak specifically from my clinical practice, not from what I have read in a book. In my own clinical practice, and most of my clients, 80% of my clients are women, young women. And
Mm,
by young, I mean between the ages of, I am going to say, 28 up to 40. Like that's the majority of my caseload. And most of them, most of them are in therapy because of interpersonal relationship issues. Not always romantic relationships. Sometimes it's platonic relationships that are creating the issue. Sometimes it's relationships with family members, maybe with a mother or a father. A lot of them are there for issues with their mothers. Lots of mother wound issues, lots of father wound issues. And then, of course, lots of romantic relationship issues getting along with other women, as you have already mentioned. It's always interpersonal relationship stuff. And when we dig into it, when we start exploring it and peeling away the onion, all the layers, what do we find underneath? Attachment trauma,
The roots.
insecure attachment styles that are linked to childhood trauma and other childhood experiences. Yeah, so this is a big deal. And you know, another thing I have learned in my clinical practice, I have observed that, hi, Monique, welcome in, Queen. I have observed that persons who are able to mask their attachment trauma in other areas of their lives, because there are some of these women who show up like they are boss ladies in other areas of their life. They are the boss at work, they are the boss everywhere. But and they are able to fully mask all of their attachment issues in other areas of their lives and show up confidently. You know where those attachment issues always expose you? No matter how good you
The relationship.
those romantic relationships, yes. Those romantic relationships will drag all your childhood trauma out and expose you.
Yeah.
So you're the boss at work, and at work you are in complete control. People are scared of you at work because you are the boss girl at work, right? But at home, you have a partner who is abusive, and instead of advocating for yourself and being assertive, you go into the bathroom and you cry. Like, what happened to the boss girl at work? What? Yeah, and I have noticed that people are able to get with insecure attachment in other relationships sometimes, but those romantic relationships, Chris says that she feels attacked. Immediately attacked. Oh my God. Where is the boss lady? She's at work.
Yeah.
She's at work. Yeah. This is why sometimes you have highly educated, super intelligent, extremely qualified, influential, powerful women in abusive relationships with their partners, and you can't believe it's the same person. And you're like, what? Well, what is going on? Because what happened to all the power that you have? Because clearly you have the power. You just don't have it in your romantic relationships. You allow your romantic partners to disrespect you, to embarrass you, to publicly humiliate you, do strange things to you, and you just take it. But at work, somebody disrespects you, you fire them on the spot.
Right.
What's up with that? Right? So, so all of these are little things that I want people to bear in mind. I would be interested in knowing what you see in your practice where it comes to this. I see some interesting things.
Yeah, when you I mean, when you first asked that question, immediately the answer was romantic relationships. Not necessarily always the super powerful businesswoman, but sometimes it's like the single mom, the single stay-at-home mom with her kids who can show up as a mother and be all of the things that her children needs her to, but when it comes to interacting with, her ex-partner or even her current partner, she reverts back into this super meek little girl who can't
Yeah.
speak up for herself,
Yeah.
who can't ask for what she needs, who her throat completely closes and she doesn't have anything to say, and she
Yes.
just listens to his direction and his opinion and his voice, and that's it. And so it's very similar, just oftentimes with a different dynamic, as far as like, maybe it's not necessarily the working woman, but it is the woman that is functioning highly in other parts of
Yes.
her life.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to these relationships, these romantic relationships, I think that there's something to do with the vulnerability in romantic relationships that makes it harder to maintain the like boss lady, I got it,
Yeah. Yeah.
And that oftentimes causes just this revert back into this little girl, back into the little girl, same patterns, same habits, repeated over and over and over and over again in cycles, until they get to the point where they're like, okay, now I recognize this cycle. I don't want to do this anymore. I will not do this anymore. And that's when the shift can begin.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. I do think, I don't know that it is a written rule established anywhere in any textbook. But a lot of us as clinicians agree that the reason why the romantic relationship is the one where all of your childhood trauma gets dragged out as
Mm.
compared to other relationships is because of the level of vulnerability that is
Mm.
required to
Mhm.
have a healthy romantic relationship. It requires a level of openness, of transparency, of nakedness,
Right.
that not just and I mean nakedness on every level, physical, emotional,
Yeah.
psychological, like everything is just, you have to let it all hang out
Yeah.
if you are going to have a healthy romantic interaction.
Mm.
Anything less is not going to be healthy because you're
Right.
going to be hiding, you're not showing up as an authentic version of yourself. And and the healthy functional romantic interaction requires authenticity. It
Yeah.
requires that you show up fully and as yourself and nobody else, right?
Yeah.
And this, I think, is why if you do not attend to your childhood trauma, your romantic relationships will.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
every time. You just will never get away with it.
Yeah.
You won't. And I
Yeah.
don't think this just applies to women, although we're talking specifically about women here today because this is the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis platform. But this also applies to men.
Mm.
If you do not address your childhood trauma, please know that your romantic relationships will.
Yeah.
It's just how it works.
Yeah.
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 So it's, you might as well handle your business before your romantic relationship handles it for you, because the exposure that will happen there might probably create some more trauma and pain that you could have done without. You
Yeah.
know, and so there's that. I want us to talk a little bit about attachment styles,
Mm.
because not everyone who has an insecure attachment style shows up in the exact same way.
Mm.
There are three different insecure attachment styles that we see in clinical practice. And I don't want us to spend too much time going into too much details. I just want to just quickly touch on them.
Mhm.
just so people know what we look for. The three attachment styles that we often see in clinical practice, and I'm speaking specifically about insecure attachment. The first one is one that we call the anxious attachment style. The second one is called the dismissive or avoidant attachment style. And the third one is called the disorganized attachment style. Sometimes it's referred to as the fearful avoidant attachment style as well. And in just like one or two lines, I'll tell you what each one looks like and how we are able to recognize it and work with it in our clients. The anxious attachment style, we call this the preoccupied attachment style sometimes too, because it really is characterized by a lot of worry and preoccupation. And the people who have this type of attachment style, they crave relationships, they crave intimacy and love. They love love. Um, they usually struggle being single because of this craving, this constant craving that they have to be in a relationship. They tend to be serial daters. You know what I call a serial dater?
Tell me.
Serial daters are like, it's like I coined that from serial killer.
Yeah, yeah.
That's terrible. But that's where I coined that phrase from. And I refer to people who are just jumping from one relationship to the next and to the
Yeah.
next, serial daters. Like they're never single. They are never single. Like they break up today and they have a new
Yeah.
boyfriend tomorrow.
It's
And you're
really
like,
common.
yeah. And you're like, didn't you tell me that you and your boyfriend broke up last week? I mean, when you came to last week's therapy session, you told me you broke up. You're like, yeah, but I got with this new person. Like between last week's session and this week's session, you
Yeah. Within the hour, all you have to do is open the phone,
listen,
scroll, swipe a couple times,
send a couple messages,
send a couple hearts.
and it's on. Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is what I call serial dating. It's like you are never single, and often you find the people who have this anxious, preoccupied attachment style doing this because they struggle. They have a really hard time being alone. People with this type of insecure attachment style love dating. They want to be seduced and loved upon, and they love receiving that attention and that affection. Why? Because it provides them reassurance, because they tend to have very low self-esteem and they need this constant confidence boost. This is what gives them confidence. This is what makes them feel good about themselves. Not having somebody constantly boosting their confidence is very difficult for them, and so this is the reason why the serial dating occurs, because on their own they do not feel worthy. They don't feel like they on I in myself am not enough.
Right.
I need somebody to create that value for me, and that is the reason why I can't be single. I have to keep filling that space every time. So I break up, I find somebody else. I break up, I find somebody else. And so, but also when I'm in the relationship, I am not very functional either, because I am anxious and preoccupied. This is the partner who is always afraid of getting left.
Yeah.
Everything you do is going to somehow tell them that you are about to leave.
Yeah.
They are always like, they live day in and day out with the fear that you're going to dump them.
Yeah.
Even though they haven't done anything. Like they haven't done anything, but they feel like you're going to leave them at any minute. And so the fear of being left, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of rejection leads to a lot of jealousy. They're always in distress. It is very stressful to date somebody like this. But these people are always dating. They were never single, Davina. I don't understand it. These people are always in a relationship.
Yeah.
They are never single. But they don't know how to have a healthy relationship. It's wild.
Healthy. Yeah.
It's wild. So that's one. The other one, the second one I mentioned, another insecure attachment style, is the avoidant attachment style. Sometimes we call it the avoidant dismissive attachment style. These people are okay with being single. They are fine with being, as a matter of fact, this particular attachment style is characterized by independence and self-sufficiency. They're very assertive. They are okay with being single, but even though they have no problem being single, they also are hardly ever single because they tend to be very sociable, very popular, very friendly people, and so they always have a date. People want to date them.
Yeah. Yeah.
People want to date them because they're social butterflies. They're the life of the party. They present as very confident and very popular, very buzzy, trendy kind of person, but that is really where it starts and ends with them. They are going to keep that relationship very superficial. So they're the life of the party. Yeah, you ask them out, they will probably say yes. And maybe they might even date you and get into a relationship with you, but please no, don't try to connect on a deep level with this person. It's probably going to be a very physical relationship. They're okay with the sex and going out on dates, and we're going to party together and stuff like that. But don't try to sit down and have a conversation with me about my feelings. Because talking about emotions is not what we do.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to get into my stuff. And no, we're not doing that. And because there is that fear of getting attached, like you cannot connect with them on a deeper emotional level. They might get into a relationship with you, but it's probably going to be a very superficial relationship. And if you try to push them to make it deeper, they're probably going to leave you.
They're going to leave. Yeah.
Yeah. They will probably just find a reason to break up with you and leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the avoidant dismissive attachment style. And then the last one, the third one, and I'm itemizing them in case anybody who's listening might be writing notes, because I know sometimes my listeners are writing things down. This is the third one. Remember, there are 3 insecure attachment styles. So this is the third one. This one we call the disorganized attachment style. And the reason why we call it that is because it looks very much like a combination of the first 2 that I just mentioned. Like it's a little bit of combination of the anxious preoccupied and a little bit of a combination of the avoidant dismissive. So these people tend to be very ambivalent. That's why we call it the disorganized attachment style. It's very contradictory. It's like, you want to be with me or you don't want to be with me, because I feel like you liked me yesterday, but today I don't know if you like me that much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they also show up as very confident, very attractive, and very exciting personalities. Like they have it all figured out. But in the back of their minds, they are extremely fearful of getting hurt. So the confidence and the excitement and the attractiveness is just a facade. In the back, they are fearful of someone hurting them. And that is the reason why they are so ambivalent. Like they really want that bond. They want to open up. But once they start getting too close and they feel like that connection developing, they start backing away. So you technically never know what you're going to get from this person. Like 1 minute, they're all over you, loving up on you. And then tomorrow, they don't want to see you. You call them and you're like, so can I come by? And they're like, yeah, no, I don't feel like I want to see you today. And you're like, but what do I do? No, you didn't do anything. I just,
changed my mind.
Yeah, I just changed my mind. I don't think I want to go anywhere today. And then tomorrow, they're like, baby, what do it? And you're like, what? Help me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So these are the 3 attachment styles. I would love to hear your experience with this.
Oh,
Because dealing with this in clinical practice is wild. Also, deal if you deal with it in your own life also, because listen, hello, therapists are also people. I
Yeah.
just wanted to stick this in.
Yeah. The
Just
humanness.
yes, the humanness, because we
Yeah.
were also baby humans,
Yeah.
and somebody also raised us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's all I'm gonna say about
Well, okay, so first of all, as you were speaking, I had flashbacks of many, many relationships and like, oh, that's familiar. Oh, that's familiar. Oh, that one too.
I promise I wasn't trying to attack you, sis. I promise.
I had no idea that any of that was happening. Okay, wow.
Yeah.
And in my practice, two of the things that I recognized as you were speaking is one, oftentimes, especially with women, is this idea of worthiness. Is this idea that I need you to love me so that I can know that I am worthy of love. Because I don't intrinsically feel that love for myself within myself in a deep spiritual, like physical, emotional level. I do not feel that love for myself. So I need you to fill that for me so that I can feel loved. And if you do not fill me in the right way or say the right things or make me feel for a moment unsecure, unstable in our relationship, I will completely break down. I don't know how to handle it. And that is something that I see a lot with women is, part of my work is helping to teach tools so that that love comes from within and it's no longer something that is being, that you're seeking outside of yourself, because ultimately it's not the answer. It's never going to be the answer.
Yeah.
Right? And so until you can develop that love within yourself, there's no person in this world that can give it to you and help you to feel the way that you want to feel and feel that emptiness that you have inside. It first needs to come from within.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was this idea of, being so afraid to be vulnerable, being so afraid to be open, being so afraid to be honest and to open their hearts, right? A lot of times because of past experiences, women become so guarded that even in an opportunity for a healthy relationship, they don't know how to soften, to open, to be vulnerable enough so that two hearts can connect and there can be genuine magic and like we can actually experience healthy, sustainable relationships.
Yeah. Agreed. I want us to talk a little bit about childhood and how childhood turns us into that. Because that's where it comes from. Like, as I said in the beginning, your attachment style, is formed before the age of 2. Of course, you do not have to. Chris asked the question earlier, can your attachment style change? We already answered that. The answer is yes, it definitely can. So just because it was established before you turn 2 years old doesn't mean that you are doomed to live with insecure attachment forever and ever. You do not have to. When you know better, you can absolutely do better.
Yeah.
You can work on yourself. You can engage in behavior modification, change the things that are not working for you, replace them with behaviors that are healthier and more functional.
Right.
When you identify the behaviors that are sabotaging your life, you can work on them.
Yeah.
So you can change. You can absolutely change. But I believe a big part of the process of change is having a clear understanding of where it came from to begin with. What happened to you?
Mm.
Why did you turn into this person?
Mm-hmm.
Where did this insecurity that you live with come from? Why do
Mm-hmm.
you not love yourself sufficiently on your own? Why do you need another human to validate your value and existence? Why are you not just by yourself enough? Why don't you have that intrinsic value that you have placed on yourself just by virtue of the fact that you exist? Why don't you have that?
Mm.
The answer is you probably were not taught that ever. You probably never got this from anyone who raised you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because they did not have it either and could
Right.
not transfer it to
Mm.
you. And this does not mean that your caregivers didn't love you. I don't want anybody to go away and say, well, Therese said. Don't do that. Don't do that. This does not mean that your caregivers, and notice I am not using the word parents.
Mm.
I am saying caregivers because not all of us were raised by our parents.
Mm.
So, whoever your earliest caregivers were, it could be grandparents, it could be an auntie, an uncle, a godmother, it could be older siblings, whoever your earliest caregivers were, this applies because these are the people who influenced your attachment style that you grew up with. And so I like to ask my clients, who raised the people who raised you?
Mm-hmm.
What do you know about their childhood?
Mm.
What is their story?
Yeah.
Especially people who are working with mother and father wounds. I like to ask them that, how much do you know about your mother's story?
Mm.
Because you know your mother wasn't born big. She wasn't
Right.
born grown. She
Yeah.
was once a baby. She
Yeah.
was born to someone.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody raised her. She was once a little girl. She
Mm-hmm.
was once a toddler. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to imagine your parents that way.
Yeah.
When we think about our parents, we think of them as grown,
Right.
but they weren't born that way.
Mm.
Your father was once a baby, a newborn baby in somebody's arms. Somebody raised him.
Yeah.
Somebody turned him into the man he
That
became.
he is. Yeah. Absolutely.
What was his childhood like? Was
Yeah.
he a happy child? Was he an abused child?
Right.
Was he a neglected or abandoned child? What about your mother? Was she loved? Was she well taken care of? Was she also abandoned? Was she abused? What kind of teenager was she?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Did
Yeah.
anybody equip her with the emotional and the psychological and other resources that she needed in order to turn into a highly functional and healthy and confident and secure woman?
Mm-hmm.
Or did she just get the bare minimum from the people who raised her, or nothing at all? Did she just
Yeah.
somehow just have to kind of come out here into the world and wing it?
Yeah. Something you said earlier about you can't give what you don't have, right? You can only give what you have. And also something that I speak to with my clients is this idea of we're all only doing the best that we can with what we have.
Yes.
And so remembering that and having grace for those humans that raised us, that only knew what they knew and that could only do what they could do.
Yeah.
How do we have grace for that relationship dynamic, so that we don't have to hold it forever. Maybe that's a whole different conversation, but
We should no, for real. We should come back and have a conversation one of these Sundays on forgiving our parents,
yeah.
because I got stories.
Oh,
I know you got stories.
yeah. Yeah.
That's another conversation for another day.
Yes.
Not today, sis.
Yeah.
Not today. We do
Yeah.
not have time for that today. But that's heavy. That is heavy
Yeah.
because I don't know how you feel about this, but I have come to the conclusion that a lot of healing does not happen in the absence of forgiveness. Maybe this isn't true for everybody, but I have seen this with a lot of my clients. The clients who are angry and resentful and resistant to forgiveness, like they will not forgive those parents. I will never forgive my father, and I will never forgive my mother. Those types of clients, those are the clients, I think, in my experience, who struggle with healing.
Yeah.
Like it takes them a long time before they can overcome things.
Yeah.
And I have concluded, I don't think you will find this in any textbook anywhere either. This is just my observation. I think forgiveness is the door to healing in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
I think it is the doorway. Like once you're able to get through that, I think then healing just begins to happen. The wound starts to close.
Yeah.
But forgiveness,
absolutely. It's like climbing a hill with a backpack full of rocks on your back.
Yes.
And you're just okay, yeah, you can go, you can do it, but it would be so much easier if you just put the rocks down.
Yes.
It's not doing anything but hurting your back.
Oh, I love that
and
so
slowing
much.
You down. Put it down. Forgive them, put it down, and move forward. That's what I also find the same thing, personally and professionally. Like, just put it down. Let's put it down and leave it there and keep going.
Yes. I'm totally stealing that analogy. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, take it.
It's like climbing up a mountain with a backpack full of rocks.
Why?
You can climb with it, but it's going to be so much easier if you just put the rocks down.
Put it down.
I love this.
Yeah.
That is perfection. That's exactly it. It's like carrying all of the anger and the resentment and you just dragging it and refusing to let it go.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to, because technically you're not harming anybody but yourself.
Right. It doesn't affect them that you have that book bag full of rocks.
No. Yeah. So I have some comments here. I'm going to highlight a couple of these comments. Chris says, I don't think it happens when we ignore the wounds either. I think what she's saying is that the healing doesn't happen if we ignore the wounds either. And she's spot on. The first step in healing is first acknowledging that there's something that you're from.
Right.
I mean, if you don't think anything is wrong, what are we doing? So acknowledgement, self-awareness that's the first, and I think the most important step in healing work. I mean, that is what brings you into therapy to begin with. You realize something is wrong. There is a wound and I need to close it. And I maybe tried to do it on my own and it hasn't worked out. And maybe I need somebody to help me walk through it. And you go to therapy. That's step one. From the moment you acknowledge that there's an issue and you need to fix it, I think healing already begins right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I don't find forgiveness to be an act of ignoring either. It's so complex, this whole process, right? Because forgiveness doesn't mean I forgot what you did. Forgiveness means I will no longer hold on to it. Forgiveness also means that maybe now I need to set different boundaries inside of
Yeah.
our relationship because I care enough about myself to do that. But it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I'm ignoring the fact that this thing happened and it was hurtful to me.
Yeah. 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 I like that. And I agree wholeheartedly. Forgiveness, the whole idea there, there are so many misconceptions around the idea of forgiveness.
Mm,
This whole concept of forgiving and forgetting.
mm,
This is not even a thing that the human brain can do. The human brain isn't designed to just erase information, people. It's
mm,
actually designed to do the exact opposite.
right.
It's a computer and it's
To keep us
designed to
safe.
store
Yeah.
information, not erase information. As a matter of fact, as a psychologist, let me just go ahead and say, if your brain is erasing information, please see a doctor. This is a sign of cognitive decline. Okay. You might have some kind of amnesia or, other things that have to
Yeah.
do with cognitive
That should be
decline.
addressed.
It should be
Yeah.
addressed. It should be addressed. That's what I'm
Mhm.
saying. Because your brain is not designed to erase information. Your brain is designed to store information.
Yeah.
And so the idea, this concept, the school of thought that many of us have been raised on, by the way, that when you forgive, you must also forget, that's an erroneous school of thought. That is poisonous pedagogy. That is the kind of thing that is going to make you feel guilty because you can't actually forget what
Right.
happened to you. Humans do not forget things just like that, especially
Yeah.
if it was traumatic. Your brain, that's the kind of thing your brain is definitely going to store.
Right, because it's to keep us safe.
It's to
You
keep
touch
you
the hot
safe.
stove, you remember that the stove is hot, so you don't touch the hot stove again.
That part, right?
Yeah.
That's the job of the brain.
Right.
It's meant to save your life. It's meant to protect you.
Yeah.
It is going to store all of your trauma
Mm.
to keep you alive, sis, to keep you alive. So you don't go back and do that thing again,
Yeah.
right? So forgiving is not going to erase. It is going to, however, help you to be able to remember that thing without the pain, without
Right.
the acute pain and the other painful emotions that are attached to that memory. That is what your brain can do for you, but it will not erase. So there's no forgiving and forgetting. And another thing, another misconception I want to just go ahead and just kick out here. And I think we were also raised on this belief, especially those of us who were raised in religious spaces. We were also taught, many of us, that forgiveness equals reconnection.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes, and your brain will be helpful with this as well. Sometimes forgiveness should not equal reconnection, because for your own safety, you need to keep distance from whatever caused that trauma.
Right.
So forgiveness may or may not be followed by reconnection. That is situational.
Right.
Each situation must be judged on its own merit. But there are many times when when wisdom dictates that you should forgive but not reconnect.
Right. Boundaries.
Yes.
Boundaries. Looking at them, reassessing them, reestablishing them, strengthening them. Let me put some distance here.
Yeah. But people with attachment trauma don't understand boundaries, right? We're gonna talk
Mhm.
about that in a moment. Let me include myself. Those of us with attachment trauma, so nobody feels like I'm attacking them. Those of us who have had to work through attachment trauma in our lives
Yeah,
have also struggled with boundaries.
yeah.
This morning, I posted on my Facebook platform that we should avoid running back to toxic people and toxic relationships in our lives because of loneliness.
Mm,
That's attachment trauma.
mm,
Your brain knows that that person is toxic. That person has probably done terrible things to you in the past.
mm.
But because you have attachment issues and struggle with being alone, singleness is difficult for you, or
Yeah,
just being alone is difficult
right.
for you because you have attachment issues.
Yeah,
What you doing? Instead of having firm, healthy boundaries, what you doing? Look at you running back to that toxic person so that
yeah,
they can fill that void that you really should be filling yourself.
yeah.
And I just felt moved to post that on my page this morning. Sometimes things just come to me and I'm like, somebody might need this message today. And I just post it. And somebody who will remain unnamed ran up onto that post and said, leave me alone.
Get out of my head, Therese.
Get away. I'm not going to say who that person was. That person may or may not be watching us right now.
Oh,
But yeah, and I, like I said, I include myself. I've been there. I've
yeah,
been there.
yeah.
I say
Same.
that without shame. Like I said earlier, therapists are people.
Yeah,
Therapists are people.
yeah.
We also have to work on our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let me pull up a couple more of these comments and then we can move on. Hi, Sunshine. Sunshine says, unforgiveness is drinking poison and wishing the people that we hold in our hearts die. I'm correcting some words because I think she has some typos. Unforgiveness is drinking poison and wishing the people that we hold in our hearts would die.
Mm.
Basically, I drink the poison and I want you to die
Right,
because
right.
I'm holding on to resentment towards you, which I 100% agree. I
Yeah.
100% agree. And she has another comment here. She says, so I agree, forgiveness opens that door to healing. It
Mm-hmm.
does. I've seen it.
Yeah.
It absolutely does. Yeah, 100%. 100%. You see when you have you ever heard a hit dog will holler?
No?
You throw a stone and the animal, whether it's a dog or a cat or a chicken or whatever, who gets
Yeah.
hit, they will holler, right?
Oh, you mean in the comments? Yes, I see.
I'm not going to say anything more. I'm just going to leave. Just
Yeah, leave
leave
that
that
there.
alone.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just leave that alone. But yeah, okay. So, can you give one or two examples of what somebody might look for if they want to be able to determine if they have insecure attachment? I mean, I already mentioned some things. People probably are already self-diagnosing in the chat section, but could you maybe share like any practical things that one might look for that you have seen that maybe I haven't already mentioned?
Mm.
Like signs that they could spot that might make them go like, oh, that's why I do that. Oh.
Well, I think that following up on some of the things that you said, it can be really important to take a look at current relationships. What do your current relationships look like? Maybe starting with friendships. What do your friendships look like? How long are your longest friendships? Do
Mm.
they always end the same way? in getting in an argument with a woman and being like, I'm never going to speak to her again. I don't care. I didn't really like her that much anyways. Is that like what is the thing that's being repeated? What is the cycle?
Or are you one of those people who thinks women can't get along with other women and always, like perpetuating that idea,
Right. That women are not supposed to be in community with each other, which is also a whole nother podcast day, because we were made to be in community with each other, raising children, living, cooking, just being together. So like, what do your relationships with women really look like? And also in this process of looking at relationships, being willing to fully look in the mirror and be honest with yourself. Because if you can't be honest with yourself, there's no point in any of this. Because that's where it starts. Really being able to look at romantic relationships. What are the cycles that maybe you're repeating in your romantic relationships? What is the same thing that happens every single time you get into a relationship with someone? That's a mirror. That's something that is being shown to you over and over and over again so that you can address it. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, like you said, the root of it is our attachment.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to tell clients that every new relationship that enters your life will fall into one of two categories. And if you think about it and truly, properly assess all of the relationships in your life and be honest with yourself, you will see that every one of them fits into one of two categories. They are either a repetition or a continuation of a pattern or cycle that already exists in your life. Or two, they are the start of some new pattern or cycle. It's either one or the other.
Yeah.
Always. Check it out. Yeah. Always. You are either repeating a pattern or starting a new pattern. Right. One or the other. And many times it's category number one that these relationships fall into. You are repeating the same patterns, same cycles, probably dating the same person over and over again, just in a different body each time.
Yeah.
Different body, different name, but it's the same person.
Yeah.
Because all the characteristics and the patterns or behaviors that you are repeating is the same in each relationship. Like nothing has shifted. You just change to a new person.
Right. Yeah. And it does take a level of awareness to be able to really see that. Because in my experience and what I've seen is that the cycles, you can't end a cycle. First of all, if you're not aware that you're in one. And second, the cycle will continue until you begin to change, because you are the constant in the cycle. The humans are changing, maybe the state is changing, the city, the country, whatever, but you are the thing that's staying the same in the cycle. Yeah. So when you begin to change intrinsically, when you begin to love yourself and you begin to open your heart and allow yourself to be vulnerable, when you begin to heal these traumas that are caused by your attachments, then the cycles, the energy of it, right? It can shift.
Yeah. Agreed. 100%. I want to share a couple of things we're not going to go past 8:00. So, as a matter of fact, I would hope that we wouldn't go past an hour and a half, but we're going to see how it goes. We're going to see how we cannot stay here all night. That's the point. But this conversation could keep going and going. But I want to just give very quickly just an idea of the type of childhood trauma that could lead to insecure attachment styles,
Mm.
right? I mentioned physical and emotional abuse already. Any type of abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse,
Mm.
physical, emotional, any form of abuse is going to obviously lead to an insecure attachment style. Like that goes without saying. Because
Mm-hmm.
how do you securely attach to an adult who is abusing you?
It's
There
harming.
is no way. And what makes that even more traumatic for a child is that this adult is also the adult who is supposed to be caring for you. This
Mm-hmm.
is the same adult who is keeping a roof over your head. This
Mm-hmm.
is the adult who is dressing you, feeding you, taking you to school, picking you up. This adult is keeping you alive,
Mm.
basically, because as a child, you are helpless. You literally depend on them to keep you
For
alive
everything. Yeah.
for everything. And this is the same person, the one who's keeping you alive, is also the person who's abusing you. Do you see the kind of confusion that causes in the brain of a child?
Yeah.
These are the people who develop that disorganized attachment style. It
Mm.
is the most difficult attachment style to get over. That
Mm.
ambivalence, because today I love you and tomorrow I don't know, I don't want to be near you, but the following day, yes, okay, I can be with you, but tomorrow I'm not sure I want to be close to you again.
Mm-hmm.
That disorganization is very common in children who were abused, especially those who were sexually abused.
Mm.
Very, very common. And also the most difficult attachment style to work with
Mm.
because they don't know whether they're going or coming.
Mm.
They're all over the place.
Yeah.
You will come into therapy this week and they'll be like, I have decided that I do not ever want to marry or have any children. I believe I was called to singleness.
Mm.
I'm just like, oh, okay. And next week they come to therapy and they're like, you doc, I, I think I might have met my person, the person who has changed the way I feel about marriage. I'm like,
I cannot.
oh, oh, right? Let's
Mm.
let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Yeah.
Because they don't know whether they're going or coming, sis. They don't
Mm.
they don't know. That disorganized attachment style will have you out here looking crazy,
Yeah. Feeling crazy.
feeling crazy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So abuse, terrible. Emotional neglect also leads, and I'm talking about things that happen in childhood. Childhood emotional neglect or abandonment,
Yeah.
very serious. Abandonment is not just physical. This abandonment is emotional
Emotion.
abandonment. I'm not just
Yeah.
talking about a parent leaving the child and moving to another country. I'm talking about also, because that is abandonment too. But abandonment is also the parent and the child are under the same roof, but the child receives zero emotional nurture,
Right.
zero affection, zero attention, no hugs, no affirmation,
Mm.
no validation. Basically, the parent is just making sure that you are fed and that you have
That you
clothes,
stay alive.
that you are alive, and that's all. As far as they're concerned, the parenting job is done.
Yeah.
The emotional needs of the child completely ignored. That is also a form of abandonment. I would argue that that's a worse type of abandonment than if you just go
Mm.
off and leave the child and move somewhere else and leave the child abandoned physically.
Yeah.
Some children might prefer that. It's more difficult, it's more painful for you to be right in front of me and ignoring me
Right.
than if
Because the child naturally wants to like show the things like I'm good. I want to do all these things so that you can tell me that I'm good and tell me that you love me and express, and that's the direct line into adulthood of
yes,
this. I'm not worthy.
yes, I want you to tell me that I'm a good girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I am now 45 and I still am desperately trying to get people to tell me that I'm a good girl.
Yeah. that
because
I'm
nobody
worthy.
ever told me that. So
Right.
I'm just like, I'm this people pleaser
Yeah.
who allows people to walk all over me. I
Mm,
allow men to take advantage of me. I don't
yeah.
ever advocate for myself. My self-esteem is on the floor because my thing is I'm going to spend my whole life proving to people that I'm a good girl.
Good enough. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I also become the overachiever. I have to be the
Mm-hmm.
best at everything. So I'm a perfectionist, and I always have to go the extra. You know what I mean? That is, listen, it's attachment trauma, sis. It's
Sounds
attachment
exhausting.
trauma.
Mm, mm.
Attachment trauma it will have you out here doing the most, burning yourself out,
Well,
both at work and at home and in your relationship, because you also are probably going to get into relationships with people who treat you the same way your parents did. They're
mm-hmm.
emotionally unavailable. So you are
Unavailable.
emotionally abandoned child. You get involved with a partner who does not know how to feed that emotional part of you just the way your parents didn't.
Right.
You end up in a relationship where you're doing all the work. You are doing all the heavy lifting
Mm,
because you have always been doing all the work and
right.
all the heavy lifting. It's all you know.
Yeah.
That too is attachment trauma, you know? So I just want
Mm-hmm.
to pinpoint a couple of actual things that people can relate to
Mm,
that they're probably doing and don't realize. So if you come from a home with divorced parents, a single parent home, look out for those types of behaviors. If you are a parentified child because you had to be looking after your parents instead of your parents
mm,
looking after you,
mm.
also probably have some attachment trauma. Or if you have parents who engaged in a lot of boundary violations, like the parent child relationship was very blurry, like they were treating you more like you were friends rather
Right.
than a parent child. That also leads to attachment trauma, especially if it's a mom.
Mm,
Um, you you need you need somebody, who you need a human in your life as a child whose job, whose role, the role they play in your life is to take care of you.
mm.
They are the authority figure who cares for you. Everybody needs that relationship.
Yeah.
The absence of that in childhood is going to have you looking for that your whole life.
Mm,
You're going to always be looking for the person who will take care of you,
mm-hmm.
because nobody ever took care of you.
Mm,
And so you might date people who are in a position to care for you. Maybe you date somebody who's much older because they
mm.
can represent that thing that you never got,
Yeah.
or you just very codependent, like, I can't survive without you. I need somebody to take care of me because I can't do
Mm-hmm.
this by myself. That
Yeah.
this comes from an absence of having that parental figure of authority that every
Mm,
child needs. Children actually need this.
yeah.
I don't know if people realize this, but children actually it's a need. It's a need.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't get it, they will always be hunting for it. Hello, Sandra. I see you, Queen. Welcome.
Hi, Sandra.
So, all right. Um, let's try to move into the closing leg of this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about healing and tools that we can give people to take away,
Mm,
that they can, like any systems that they can put in place to help them begin to move toward a more secure attachment style. If somebody's listening right now and what we're saying is really resonating, Like they are like, oh my God, they're talking about me.
Hmm.
What can you give them to take with them that they can begin to use, to start seeing some movement away from the insecure to the secure?
Hmm. Wow, that's a good one. That's a great question. I personally, so I work with earth medicines. You know that about me, Therese, and I deeply believe in the power of earth medicines to help us get past the barriers that our brains sometimes create.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, I do deeply believe that because earth medicines come from the earth itself is a deep healing tool that I personally deeply, deeply believe that we've been, especially as women, taken away from in Western society, and we don't spend enough time in nature. We don't spend enough time just breathing
Yeah.
outside with our feet on the ground, grounding our bodies, which is scientifically important for our health.
Yeah.
Breathing fresh mountain air, um, playing, just these little things that allow us to come back to, well, one, inner child work is really beautiful. And when we begin to work with our inner child and allow our inner child to express themselves and to play and to feel safe and to feel loved, all of that transfers into our adult life. So, yeah, I would say, I guess the two biggest things for me are one, getting back to nature, because nature is earth medicine and earth medicines will support us in our journeys. And two, inner child healing.
Mm.
Those two
Oh,
things.
good.
Super
We could do a whole podcast on inner child work.
Mm-hmm.
I am making a list of things, like just I am literally writing that down
Yeah.
because today alone we've already mentioned at least three things that are other podcasts
Mm-hmm.
that we can talk about.
Mm-hmm. Let's
Um,
meet every month.
we need to. We absolutely need to. This needs to become a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I'm gonna plan a podcast on inner child work. I'm gonna plan a podcast on forgiveness, but specifically forgiveness of parents. That's a conversation that we need to have. How do we forgive childhood trauma
Mm-hmm.
that was caused by the people who brought us here
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
who were supposed to take care of us?
Mm-hmm.
How do we forgive that? Because the impact that has on the psyche of a child it's immeasurable.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, yeah, we're coming back to have that conversation. We're coming back for that. We'll set a date and come back for
Yeah.
that.
Let's
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. But in addition to what you have said, I will add that you need to begin to get comfortable with an authentic version of yourself.
Mm.
I think that's one of the biggest things I see with persons who are healing from attachment trauma that I work with. They struggle with authenticity. And the reason they struggle with authenticity is because they don't truly believe that an authentic version of themselves is a good version of themselves.
Right. Right.
They feel like they have to add to it or subtract from it. It has to be tweaked or diluted a little bit or enhanced a little bit. But whatever it is they're doing, a purely authentic version of themselves is never good enough.
Right.
It's never good enough. They don't think that that is acceptable.
Right. Because maybe if I'm my true self, you won't love me. And then
Yes.
what?
Yeah. Because in my whole life, especially in the start of my life, I was never good enough. The people that I love most don't think I'm good enough.
Yeah.
My family,
Yeah.
they don't think I'm good enough. My
Mm-hmm.
parents never thought I was good enough. So why would a stranger who I just met who wants to have a relationship with me think that I'm good enough?
Right.
I'm gonna have to fix me up
Pretend.
and pretend. Yeah, I'm going to have to show up as something other than an authentic version of me. I have to hide parts of myself.
Yeah.
I have to put on a show
Mm.
because in my authenticity, I won't be good enough. This is probably the biggest hurdle that a lot of people with attachment to trauma have to overcome.
Mm.
They choose attachment over authenticity.
Authenticity. Yeah.
And you and I, we've had this conversation. We've had
Yeah.
this conversation before.
Yeah.
Not on the World Wide Web, but you know. Um, and I encourage them to do the opposite. Practice in all of your relationships, the romantic, the platonic, the family, the professional, all of your relationships. Challenge yourself to choose authenticity over attachment. Get up every day and challenge yourself to show up as a completely authentic version of you and begin. Let that be where you begin shaving people out of your life who
Right.
have no business being there
Right.
because the version of you that is authentic is not what they want.
Right.
And you begin not just cleaning up your mind and your heart and your soul, but you also begin cleaning up your environment when
Mm.
you do that.
Yeah. Super
Because there are
important.
people who will not be comfortable with an authentic version of you.
And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with letting go of what no longer serves you and allowing yourself to create space for what does to enter into your field. That's how it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. And the longer you hold on to what has no business being there, the longer it will take for you to get what actually does
Right.
belong there.
Because there's no space.
There's no room. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So that is one thing. There is so much I could say, but we this is a work that happens over an extended period of time. So obviously we can't give every single tool that we would give to a client, but I'm just hitting on a couple of things. And so I'm going to just share one other thing that I think it's a great takeaway to give our listeners, in addition to practicing authenticity, is to also practice challenging the inner critic that lives in your head.
Mm.
People with attachment trauma often are bullies. Yes, I said it. They're bullies. But guess what? They're not bullies to other people.
Yeah.
They are bullying themselves every
Mm-hmm.
day. The biggest bullies they encounter are the thoughts they think in their own minds about
Right.
themselves.
Themselves.
They
Yeah.
tell themselves the worst things about themselves. I am ugly. I am not worthy.
Mm.
Nobody will ever want me. I am not lovable. I can't get anything right. I fail at everything that I do.
Mm.
I can't attract any healthy partners. I don't, I mean, it's the biggest bullies they deal with in their lives are the thoughts that they are having in their own heads.
Yeah.
They have no grace and no compassion for themselves. None.
Mm.
And so that is the other takeaway. That's the other thing I would want people to take away from today's conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So you have two things that you can work on.
Yeah.
The other stuff, you need to get yourself a therapist, sis.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many forms and ways and tools and resources, and yeah. Find support. Find support in a way that feels authentic and genuine and supportive to your being,
Mm-hmm.
and allow someone who's walked a path to share their blueprint with you, because that's what we're here to do as humans, is to share the blueprints, and we help each other and we support each other. And so
Right.
find someone that can share their blueprint with you that will be supportive to your journey.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's time for us to wrap it up. Try not to go past an hour and a half on this podcast. Sometimes I don't quite make it. Listen, I be having a lot of things to say. But we're at the hour and a half mark right now.
We made it.
So we need to wrap this up. We could keep going. There's so many other things we could say, but we can come back. We can come back another day, and we can, we can keep having this conversation, because this can keep going and going and going and going.
Yeah.
Another thing, I'm gonna write it down. We need to come back and talk about female relationships, like our relationships with other women.
The sister wound.
The sister wound. Oh, yes. Gotta talk about that. Listen. Okay, so I have enough podcast topics for the rest of the year. When am I gonna get through this? Anyway. All right, so I am going to let you give your parting words to the queens who are watching us before we end today.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, for joining this conversation. I invite you, if something came up as we were talking that you'd want us to delve deeper into in another podcast, please feel free to message, comment, share that thing so we're aware of it. If anyone wants to contact me, reach out to me on socials, Instagram, Facebook. I'm an open book if you have any questions about my journey or my work or any of the things. And I'm so happy that we got to have this conversation and actually share it with others, because normally these conversations are just between us.
Yes.
But, I'm so glad that we shared.
Yes. Yeah, because this is a conversation you and I have had many times. We just we don't have it on here.
Right.
Yeah, but I thought it would be a good idea for us to let's go have one of the conversations that we like to have and let the people hear it.
Right.
Right. And so we will come back and have more conversations for you guys to listen in on. It's okay. We'll do this again.
Yeah.
And please do reach out to Davina on her social media platforms. You can find her on Facebook look for Davina Mujer. On Instagram, it's what's your Instagram handle?
Oh, it's _Divina Mujer on Instagram.
Okay, so look her up, inbox her, DM her if you feel like you could use her skills and her tools. She does a lot of womb work. I don't do that. So that is something unique to her. I would encourage you to take advantage of that, because That is key to your healing process
Mm,
as well. And thank you so much for taking time out of your Sunday to
mm,
be here with me this afternoon. I appreciate you so
yeah.
much. We were supposed to have Aisha with us today.
Mm,
Aisha was not able to make it, but we're sending her lots of
mm,
big love and all the
mhm,
good, nice healing and
mm,
positive and loving energies to you. Sending it all of that over to you.
yes.
And perhaps we will be able to have her with us next time.
Mhm.
So, thank you also to the queens who have been chatting with us in the chat section. I see you all and I love you all. And you are the reason this platform is here. I mean,
Mhm.
this platform exists because of the followers. So, thank you
Mhm.
so much for being here with us today.
Mhm.
Remember that this podcast is being recorded. This recording is going to be on the YouTube page, also on the Facebook page. You can go back
Mhm.
and access it. You just need to look for the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis logo. It's on all the pages. And you can download, you can share, you can rewatch as many times as you need to. And also, the chat section below us is going to be available even after the live ends. So if
Mhm.
you want to ask questions, put them in the chat section. I
Mhm.
will be checking. You can also inbox and DM me, right?
Mhm.
So you have access to us even when we are not sitting here live. Remember
Mhm.
this, okay? Um, and that's it. That's all I am going to say. I leave you all
Mm.
love and light. And remember to be a beautiful week.
Mm. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.